Okay, this is your Project 6 hint video. It's really a complete project. All you have to do is kind of work your way through it. This is a quick and dirty thing. I didn't spend a lot of time on it, and if it works, that's all that matters to me anyway, but as long as you fulfill the requirements. I decided to use radio buttons because they're mutually exclusive, and all I do is look at the checked properties, see which one they've selected. The default is rock. They don't have to change it. They can use it. I've got a play game button and an exit button. And we'll examine all that. Now there's a couple of labels here without borders that I display some information in. It's just easier that way because I don't have to hide them and disable them. I just wipe the text out and it's as if they disappeared. You don't have to do it that way. Okay, so let's take a look at the code. Okay, at the class level, I've got a random object. You know how to do that. If you don't, it's very easy. This doesn't actually give it a number. It just creates it and instantiates it. And when you see this, what you have here, you've got the parent object random, and rand is what I decided to call the child. So I'm inheriting all the properties and methods from this, and then I'm breathing life into it with the new operator, and this is actually a default constructor, but initially it allows me to use it when I do this. Not all objects have to have the new operator. It depends on what it is. I've got three constant integers. Rock is 1, paper is 2, scissors is 3. You could do it 0, 1, and 2. It's up to you. This is part of their stuff here. And then I have button new. Now it says that you need to create a function or two to modularize your program, and I chose to do a void non-value returning function that I'm calling from my button click event here, new game. So here I'm essentially let me show you what happens when the form loads. Okay, so there it is, and it's default to rock. So if they hit play game, it's going to display up here what the computer selected and decide who won. And that's what it's going to do. The user can keep it on rock or just keep hitting play game, see what happens. Looks like I've got something going on with my random number here. There it goes. Or they can select something else. Just depends on what they want to do. If they change their settings, it just wipes everything out. And so now they have a tie. Okay, computer chose rock and have a tie again. This time the computer chose paper, and it says you lose, paper wraps rock. And these rules are right there on page 393, and I'll show you what I did. All right, let's take a look at it and see how this is all happening here. There's one little additional thing I did, and I'll show you that. So inside the new game click event, or the play game, I changed the name of it, but I didn't bother to do it here. I'm grabbing a number between 1 and 3 inclusive, right? Because rock is 1, paper is 2, scissors is 3. So, and then I have a user choice here, which I've defaulted to 1, which is basically it's going to get set anyway, but that's the rock selection. I'm wiping out anything from the previous game in those labels. They're with no border. Now I'm deducing the user selection, and all I'm doing is examining these radio buttons to see if RDO rock is checked, because they're only going to be one or the other, mutually exclusive. If rock is checked, the other two cannot be. Now if you use check boxes, you'd have the ability to check more than one. That's not what we want in this case. Okay, we want it to be mutually exclusive, so that's what we've done. So I'm just deducing to see if that's true, and if it is, I'm setting the user choice to rock, because that's what it is. If it's and these are values up here. See, so if it's if paper's checked, then I'm setting it to paper. Otherwise, it has to be scissors. It's going to be one of the three. And I'm doing the same thing here, but I'm just outputting some text. I'm doing this for the computer. So if the computer generated a 1, then I'm just outputting computer chose rock, because that's part of what they wanted us to do. Okay, so I'm doing that. And then here I'm calling my method. Right, it's a private method of type void, which means it's a non-value returning method. It takes 2 arguments of type integer, right? I just decided to do it that way. There are different ways to do it. Now here again is a series of ifs. Um, there may be a better way to do this. I just did it quick and dirty. The first thing I did notice though is if there's a tie, there's no sense in looking at anything else. The game is over at that point. They have to play again. So I'm checking for that first. So if user choice equals computer choice, it's a tie, and then we just blow out of it. Else, if that's not true, then we're going to use the computer. Now you could do this either way. You could use the user on the outermost ifs and the computer on the innermost. This is just the first thing I did. So we're checking to see if the computer is rock, has chosen rock, and if so, here are the two things that can happen. Remember, we've eliminated ties, so that's done right off the bat. So that makes this a little cleaner inside here. So what I'm doing here is, if the computer's chosen rock, then I'm checking to see if the user choice is scissors. It can't be rock, or we would never be inside here, because that would have been taken care of here. If it's scissors, I output the winner. You lose. Rock smashes scissors. Now I initially had these decisions in here to make it easier on me, right? You don't need these because it can only be one or the other, or we wouldn't be inside here. So I just did that so that I could kind of debug it a little bit better. But you don't need this because it's okay, but that's the only thing it can be. So why test it? You know, it's just not very optimal. So if the user choice equals scissors, then you win. Scissors cuts paper. Else it has to be paper. Nope, that's not right. You lose. Paper wraps rock. I got to check that. You lose. Must be paper. No, it can't be paper. It must be rock. Sorry about that. I copied that from up here. That's why it's there. So if the computer has chosen paper, the user choice either has to be scissors or rock. Okay, because if it were a tie, it would never be inside here. So that optimizes this quite a lot right here by doing that, by getting the tie all the way to begin with. So it eliminates one selection inside here. Else if computer choice is scissors, well, here's another one. It has to be scissors. So there again, that was for debugging purposes. I'm going to get rid of that. I don't need it. Else it must be scissors. And again, I don't need it here. So if user choice is paper and this is scissors, you lose. Scissors cuts paper. Else they must have selected rock. It says you win. Rock smashes scissors. Okay. And that's all this is, a series of ifs, just making decisions. And so now one other thing I want to show you here. Once they select something different than what they had before, you need to wipe out, because there's two ways to do it. They can leave it checked where it is and hit play game, and that's going to reset everything and generate a new random number. Or they can go up and change their selection on the radio buttons. That needs to do the same thing as the play button does. So, or essentially wipe everything out, and then they hit play button again. Now what I did here is I did a check changed event. All right. That means that if they check this, it's going to uncheck that and check that, or if they check this, it's going to uncheck that and check that. That's an event that they cause. All right. If they fire that, if they do that, then I need to wipe out those two labels. Essentially, that's all I do. The problem with this is, or not really a problem, but there's an easier way to do it. Every time you create check changed event, you're going to have a separate one for each one of these radio buttons. Well, you don't need to do that because they all do exactly the same thing. So what you can do is you can create one and then have the others call that. All right. And the way you do that, there's a couple different ways, but the way that's done is if I come over here and I set RDO check changed, that's the default event. I can come over here and instead of doing RDO paper check change, I can just go in here and select the rock, and that means that when the check changes on the paper radio button, it's going to actually look for the event that's handled here. So I'm just pointing these to that event handler, so they all three use rock, the RDO rock check changed event, and that's why there's only one in there. You can do it. You can have three, but you're going to have three with different names, and they're all going to have the same code in there. So if it's a lot of code, it's a lot easier to do it this way. This is not too bad. I think it's pretty easy. Seems to work. All right, well, there you go. See you at the midterm.